Good afternoon. My name is Don Green, and some of you may know me from the American Guns and Glory Network and some shows produced by Rigel Studios in Las Vegas, Nevada. Others may know me from the gun shows, my website, and of course as a criminal defense attorney in California, Nevada, with the specific emphasis of my practice being with firearms. Today we're presenting a special news report and alert on some recent developments in Nevada law, recent developments in self-defense law. And today I'm honored to have Miss Maggie Mordaunt of, Homeland?
Homeland Personal Protection.
Homeland Personal Protection. And Miss Mordaunt is a nationally recognized expert. I've used her myself, and we're using her in a couple of murder cases on self-defense and some other attempt murder cases. And one in particular where when we noticed her as an expert back in May or June of this year, the Clark County District Attorney's Office did not even file a counter-expert kind of notice. And I have no explanation for that other than Ms. Mordaunt's resume is extensive and is solid. Today we're going to go over a few points, and Maggie, if you could tell us a little bit about your experience so that the viewing and listening audience can get to know you a little bit.
Thank you, Don. Thank you for having me today. So Maggie Mordaunt, CCW Maggie, concealed carrying woman. And so my expertise is in defense. I started out, like many instructors, through the National Rifle Association, worked my way through the USCCA, United States Concealed Carry Association's education program, also with the Intuitive Defensive Shooting Program, ICE training, Rob Pincus, teaching the science of self-defense. I'm also a pro hunter as well, working as a subject matter expert in that field as well. And so I've trained over 12,000 people since 2000 for the past 15 years. And so I've seen a lot of cases where some of my students, if they were in a position where they were forced to use their firearm, it can be great when the student knows what to do, but it's really sad to see when someone doesn't know what to do because they haven't taken proper training.
And would you suggest to the viewing and listening audience that they constantly train as much as possible with finances permitting, but don't just rely on your CCW training?
Correct. CCW class is not enough. It's more informational. It's more concepts. Students are sitting in a classroom sometimes for 8 hours. The state mandate is to shoot 30 rounds of ammunition from 3 different distances, 3 yards, 5 yards, 7 yards. The minimum qualifications are just really not what someone would need to defend themselves with. It's just really very basic. Taking training and then practicing it consistently is really important. So frequent and realistic training is important. So the realism of the training, not just marksmanship, not competition shooting, that isn't the kind of training that people need to be looking for. They need to be looking for real, true defense training that is relevant to what we're seeing today and what really applies today.
Well, that leads us to our first point here today. May we have the first slide? Now, the slide says a self-defense claim is not available to a person who is not a participant in the crime against the person claiming self-defense, only applicable to the bad guy. Let me give you this situation that happened in Kansas. A Kansas police officer went to a mad dog or vicious dog call. The dog was attacking him. The police officer fires several rounds at the dog. Now, I'm not sure if fragments of a bullet, of an expended bullet, hit or killed a young girl who was a bystander. But what's relevant today is, can you explain to our viewers why there wouldn't be self-defense as to this little girl?
So in that case, the officer had multiple different levels of use of force that he could have chosen. Maybe for him, psychologically, he just thought, go to the gun first. There's always pepper spray, there's a taser. They have batons in some cases. I'm not sure why he went straight to the gun. Maybe that's what he practices with most often. I think that might have been his automated learned response of his tool that he used most often. So because we talk about, frequent and realistic training, maybe he needs to do more training with something that would have been better for this case. Know your target and what is beyond. That child was beyond, so the fragmenting of the bullet when it ricocheted, she was the one who got the brunt of it. Not sure what happened to the dog.
Let's go back to that slide. And you see that in the milliseconds that it takes to shoot someone, you are responsible for looking beyond that person's body. And is that what you train? Is that what you tell people?
That's what we teach. We teach, hey, you have to recognize the environment that you're in. Talk about awareness. We use awareness as a teaching tool of what's in our environment, who else is in our environment. Is there one threat, two threat? What's beyond our threat? What are our capabilities? How good are we with our guns? And what speed should we be shooting? Confidence could, really determine the speed in which we shoot. And unless you're shooting under panic, people just, spray and pray and hopefully they stop the threat from being a threat to them. But how much of a threat are you being to what's beyond your target and recognizing who else is beyond that?
So we have to look at perhaps other persons who are in the proximity of where you're shooting.
Yes.
Other vehicles, which may or may not be occupied, such as a parking lot at Walmart, and other structures, residences, or businesses which might be occupied. So, and in the average CCW primary class, is there time to go over these concepts other than just mention them?
So really it is more concepts that we talk about, depending on if that concealed carry weapons class has a longer range time where students are getting to learn how to draw from concealment, draw from a holster. But in the most cases, an 8-hour course and all the things that we actually have to cover through the Nevada Sheriffs and Chiefs Association is really mostly classroom. So again, an 8-hour class is just not enough. Getting more range time is important.
So in the real world, in your particular business, Homeland, what is it, Homeland?
Homeland Personal Protection,
Homeland
how about HPPtraining.com?
HPP Training.
There you go.
You have additional classes. We're not selling the class, but at the end you'll see Ms. Mordaunt's website and contact information, and it may come along the streamer as well. But in those classes, ma'am, is it now we have an advanced class where you're having people like shooting from the side of a structure, maybe shooting from a vehicle, so that they can at least get that particular training?
Yes. So the biggest thing for us is at what level is the person at when they show up? Is this someone who's never shot a gun before in their whole life? Are they new to firearms? The pandemic actually really brought out a lot of new gun owners. These are people who said they would never buy a gun ever in their life, and then now they want to buy a gun. So Introduction to Defensive Handgun is a course where they can try before they buy, find out which gun actually fits best in their hand, which one feels best, and then learn how to shoot that gun in the context of self-defense, also while applying safety as a skill. That's really vitally important.
And that goes to our first slide that we just talked about with the police officer. We're not condescending the police officer. We're just trying to give our representative viewers what they have to look at. And it's not just, well, I pulled my gun because I was in fear for my life. But what's beyond that? May we go to the next slide? Okay, now, in my practice, I see a lot of cases where attorneys refer cases to me, or even gun stores refer cases to me, where the suspect has gone into the bar, the restaurant, and the saloon. Now, my basic point is, if you're going to go into a bar, a restaurant, or saloon, don't take your weapon. And if you do, don't drink. What would you tell our listening audience and our viewers about the consumption of alcohol, perhaps the effect of it has on you, and what is it going to do to you? What is it going to do for your analysis of the case if you're called upon by the attorney to provide some expert testimony?
Right. So the biggest thing for us is teaching our students that with rights comes responsibilities. They have to understand that there's huge liability in owning firearms and taking them into a public environment, especially if you choose a firearm, the force equalizer, to use into your defense plan. You have to be in the understanding that there are laws that are going to be placed in front of you that you have to comply with. If you're going to use a firearm, know that could affect your ability to think clearly, even your vision. vision, your reaction time, because alcohol can actually slow your reaction time, your recognition of what's in your environment. And then, if you're forced to use your firearm, that blood test and that urine test is going to be taken and could be used against you in a court of law.
But conversely, I always tell my people, what were you drinking? Were you drinking at all? Okay. And this only happened a few days ago. Go do a urine. It may show up, it may not. Or I also send them to one of the toxicology places to do a hair follicle sample, which when I ask them, do you do drugs? No, I only do marijuana. Okay, marijuana is a drug. Marijuana equals no drugs per ATF and FBI regulations, regardless of whether it's legal. And don't give me this, well, I was at a party and I was just sniffing around. No, that's not going to work. You mentioned something a few moments ago, force equalizer. Can you expand on what that means?
Yes, so the firearm, we look at it as a force equalizer in the event that you're offered personal violence in a situation where, what if you have children with you, someone else who may depend on you, or even somebody else in your environment who may depend on you to use a weapon, the firearm, especially when you're introducing it as a defense tool. It is your weapon, even if it were a knife, taser, something like that. But the firearm is a great force equalizer in the sense that you can use it to stop a threat from beyond 2 arms reach. This is not a physical altercation that you're getting into. This is not an empty hand defense course. This is not an improvised weapon sort of course. Understanding that you are in possession of a tool, a weapon that if used negligently or maliciously, you could injure or kill someone else or even yourself. Again, the force equalizer, the firearm, we use it for our military or law enforcement. Everyday civilians using them to defend themselves are very efficient in being able to use this tool because it can stop a threat quickly.
And would you say that proper training, not just relying on CCW, proper training, frequent training would be something which every firearms owner, regardless of age, should consider?
I highly recommend it. If you're going to use a firearm to defend yourself, you should know how to use it in context. And so taking courses that are in context, not competition classes, not taking training from competition shooters, even military and law enforcement have different training for their theater of war, if I'll put it that way. When it comes to civilians, we have to comport ourselves and understand how to use those firearms in that context of defense. Again, you can't use a firearm like a game tool. It's not a video game where you can just push reset. But really understanding how to use a firearm that works in a fashion, I could put it this way, training that works well with what the body does naturally under stress. We have changes of blood flow to the body, visual acuity, audible exclusion, so many different things that can happen to the body, grasp reflex. And then also, if you don't know what to do or you possess no skills whatsoever with the tool that you've chosen to use, now you're kind of improvising and making things up as you go, as we've actually seen in the past, where people just think that the gun is going to save them, and they lack the skills to be able to use a firearm efficiently to stop that threat from continuing to present a lethal threat to them or someone else. So training in context is very important. So stay away from those competition classes where you think you're going to learn how to use a gun to protect yourself when really it's going to cause you to fail potentially.
Let's go back to that last slide, please. The last portion of it, if we may. And when it says don't follow somebody into the bar, okay, here's the scenario. You're in the bar with your family. Some biker types come by, they knock over your drink, call your wife all kinds of bad names and say things about your daughter. Should you go to your vehicle, get your weapon, and go back into the bar? It's real simple.
That would be no.
And tell the audience why.
Well, you want to be the bigger person. That person's not a threat to you. If you're able to leave the bar, leave the bar. Get your family and just go. You have a bigger duty to retreat and try to de-escalate. Say something funny like, hey, man, I'm so stupid. Yeah, my wife, she's fat, whatever. Yeah, I love her just the way she is, and, whatever. Just kind of walk away. The fight you don't get in is a fight that you win, so walk away whenever possible.
Let's change that scenario. You're in the bar. You're at a family restaurant. Biker types are in there. They're not drinking because they don't. Let's say it's I'm not going to use the name, but it's a family type restaurant. And then when they walk by, spill your drink, he pulls a knife on you, and you already have your weapon, and he puts the knife to your daughter's throat. In those milliseconds, I mean, what does it drop the weapon, or What do you do?
So the biggest thing is, for that, again, we have to look at what's the skill set that you possess, the person with the firearm. Can you actually get that hit? Do you have time to apply more skills to get on target and potentially shoot that person? Is your ability to get the hits, would you chance it with your daughter there with a knife to her throat? Again, those are all, do you have the training? Do you have the ability? Is that something that you've practiced? And how often did you practice it? Again, we're looking at now changes of blood flow to the body, heart rate, all kinds of things that we have to apply into that scenario. I think maybe the best thing could be to apologize and try to de-escalate as much as possible. And if it's a tool of last resort, is really what we say, use your firearm to the best of your abilities to get that hit, and be prepared for what may actually happen with that knife to your daughter's throat.
And the aftermath of a shooting, we'll briefly touch on that.
For sure.
Tell us about the aftermath of a shooting, which could go either way, as a good self-defense shooting or one which is questionable. What happens in the aftermath with the actual client, the shooter? Tell us in your experience.
So there's so many different emotional things that you can go through, anywhere from elation to revulsion, amnesia. I mean, you're like, wow, what just happened? What did I do? How did I respond? What's happening now? Are there more aggressors? Are there, assessing, are there more bad people in the area? Where's your family at? Is there another CCW holder that just showed up with a gun too, and now they see you holding a gun? Those are all those things that you have to look around, after the shooting. Can you get to a better place of advantage without leaving the scene? Or do you have to leave the scene and stay within a good distance and let 911 know where you are and say, I had to leave the scene because people saw me as the perpetrator, and now I'm in danger still. Is it safe to stay in the place? Stay if you can. Otherwise, get out of there, because now you may be forced to use your firearm again on someone who thinks that you're the perpetrator, and really you're the victim.
Okay. Let's go to Maggie's contact information, if we may. And Maggie, can you tell the viewing audience again your phone number? It's right there on the screen for them to write down. And what does HPP training stand for again?
It is Homeland Personal Protection, firearms training to defend on our own homeland.
And is it also training that involves outdoors and indoors?
Correct. We do indoor and outdoor training. We have simunitions as well. We train law enforcement, military, everyday civilians. And so we have outdoor ranges that we can get a little bit more movement on. A lot of people like to shoot outdoors. It's not as noisy. Indoor ranges can be a little loud. Not to mention, if there's other people on the range, you don't know if there's someone who's going to be shooting shotguns or really loud rifles, things like that. So it's really nice to get out to an outdoor range whenever possible. I mean, it gets hot here, but we've been using some indoor ranges here locally, some great ranges that we're affiliated with. What
I tell people, it's 50-50 that you're going to shoot from inside or outside, so get training for both. You'll see my contact information on the streamers throughout the show. Don Green, you can reach me on my 24-hour cellular, 702-409-8239. And we'll be back on another show, and thank you so much for watching.